right, here we go. I have Dr. Pat Boulogne. Is that correct?
Boulogne.
Boulogne.
Got
All
it.
right, nice. So you and I connected on LinkedIn, and you have a book title that I kind of love. It's
That
it's
you
called,
love my book title called "Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired?"
yes, exactly. We're going to get into these things with you regarding weight loss, allergies, fitness, wellness, cooking. Because last time I talked to you, we talked a lot about food as well. And
We did, and I love to cook.
yeah, in different places all over, not only North America, but I think we talked about Italy as well. You look like you're in the Keys. I don't know where you're at.
I know, it's wishful thinking.
So let's kind of get into this with you. Kind of explain to people at least who you are, what you stand for, if you could, a little bit regarding,
Well,
health.
My background is as a chiropractic sports physician, and I always had an interest in nutrition. I had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful teacher when I was in chiropractic school that just like all the glue, like you understood like why you eat butter as opposed to margarine, and and how to really put foods together in order to be healthier. And he was my first drop in the bucket that created a ripple effect. And then when I arrived into practice as a doctor of chiropractic, I had a couple mentors in chiropractic. One said, "What you got isn't what you got." And I went, huh? And so because so many people have symptoms that they relate to or they get treated in Western medicine for, and they really don't have that. They have something else that created that problem, and that's how your body's manifesting those issues. And so I had to practice for many years, and I have moved on from that. I moved to Boston for a while and had some private clients, and then I also during that time span when I was on the Cape, have certification for sports medicine rehabilitation, did a lot of clinical nutrition work with people, and I started studying functional medicine and following my mentor in functional medicine, Jeff Bland, for when I was still in practice and still lived on Cape Cod. You know where that's at, right?
Yeah, we talked about that, yes.
And so then from that point, then I moved to Boston, and I decided to go to acupuncture school because I felt there was something missing. And so it gave me a very well-rounded idea about like how to approach and talk to people and give them a better idea about their health when they ask me specific questions. So then after that, I actually obtained my certification in functional medicine and lifestyle medicine. So I have a big arsenal of tools to help sick people get well and well people to maintain their wellness and even reach their optimum level wellness for them.
How are you doing this? Independently? Are you at a hospital? Are you at a clinic? Are you at where?
I'm working virtually right now, and I'm about to settle down back into a practice setting in an area called the Plains in Virginia. And so that, when I work on somebody, usually it's the typical chiropractic practice sees a patient, they get adjusted, and they come in, they have an exam, evaluation, intake, and they get adjusted with a goal plan, and people usually go to them for pain.
Okay.
And so people don't come for me for pain. They might, but that's not necessarily what we all work on, because pain is an indication that there's some inflammation, there's other things going on in the body. Sure. And so I always look at, how, when I'm looking at diet, exercise, I look at targeted supplementation, and then which is the definition of lifestyle medicine. And then, after that, referring that person out to a medical doctor or collaborating with a medical doctor if it's necessary. Because most things that people have are lifestyle induced.
Of course. Right? Yeah.
From the foods that they eat, air, water, that kind of stuff.
For sure. How did you end up doing this? Does this go way back to the way you were raised? Were you from America, France? Where were you born and raised? And how did you even end up on
Well,
this journey?
I started this journey. I grew up in suburbs of Detroit.
Oh, okay.
And my father wanted me to be an electrical engineer. And I just went, oh, Dad, I can't do that. All your friends are so boring. I can't do that.
Right.
And so I went to college, and I always was very, very interested in pre-med and science. I won this when I was 9 years old. I won second place in the state of Michigan for the science exhibit that year.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started, science classes always to me were like reading the recipe book. They were easy.
Interesting. Well, I never thought about it like that. Not for me.
Yeah, I know, not for a lot of people. Chemistry
Right.
wasn't like that, but inorganic chemistry wasn't like that for me.
Gotcha.
Organic chemistry was like that for me. It just the light went on and everything came together. So then I had a friend of mine who was going to chiropractic school, and I've always been taught that chiropractors were quacks. And he said, you should do this. You know, you've got all the prerequisites. You've got pre-med, and I was working at the University of Michigan Hospital at the time. And I was really dissatisfied there because I never saw anybody get well. And I was a patient relations advocate. So I helped people when they first got in. What do you need? You forgot a toothbrush, blah, blah, blah. And it was very frustrating to work there in that capacity. Right. And then, I've always have eaten well. I grew up on, food that came from the garden. And we always had a garden every summer, and I lived in an Italian neighborhood. And so it's just like the guy next door grew his grapes to make the wine. And then I was making pasta every weekend with my girlfriend and her mother. So I had a little bit of that flavor into that. And I always had the capacity to have a lot of common sense. So when things didn't make sense to me, I was the person in class going, could you explain that one more time? And asking things about that. So my friend forced me to go to chiropractic school. And I didn't want to go. And at first I had an experience in Ann Arbor, Michigan with a chiropractor. And I thought, wow, if this guy can do this, so can I. And so that's when I got out of there, came home, applied, went to school. And the rest relatively is history. My ex-husband was a chiropractor. His father was a chiropractor, osteopath, and physical therapist. And they lived in the south of France. And so when we went there, it was always this big learning lesson. Even though it felt like vacation, but you got to learn a lot of stuff and to bring tools back into your practice. Gotcha. And then I looked for people who were a lot more knowledgeable than me and made something, complex, which I'm very good at, taking complex things, finding a better way and giving simple solutions to go from point A to point C, whether it's explaining a concept or whether it's applying the concept with somebody for their health. And I like to advocate with people because a lot of times people go to the doctors and they freeze. And, and I would ask my patients, well, did you ask them about this? It's like, we would go over what questions to ask.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, and so, because a lot of people, they don't know the questions to ask, so they ask the wrong question, therefore they get the wrong answer. And they're basing their decisions upon the rest of their health based upon how they ask those questions. And they might not be making the right choices, based upon an education that they should get from their doctor. And in these days and time, you can't be in a doctor's office, for more than like 7 minutes, and they're supposed to get everything that they need to have from you, right?
Yeah. There's also fear involved, I presume. I think a lot of times when you go to the doctor, you want to hide certain things. You don't want them. What you should be telling them a lot of times is what you're not telling them. Sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Because we're afraid to tell them maybe certain conditions or things we're going through. Yeah.
Well, sure. I mean, and that's where, this book comes into some play, is because when I started doing functional medicine out of my practice, like years ago, when it first was coined that name, I would give people a questionnaire to do. And they would do the questionnaire, and I'd come in and I'd take a look at the questionnaire, and inevitably they always left parts of it blank. So I would ask them, it would take me longer, took a chunk out of time for their consult with me for nutrition when I decided to add that component to my practice, because it's more than just pain that you treat. And you treat the whole person. And so, you know, when I would ask them, like, why did you leave that blank? They would say, I didn't understand what they were asking. And I thought I answered that in another area. So I use that questionnaire and survey, and I always tell people, answer every question. And then I would chart it out and look at how their health patterned out. And so when I looked at how their health patterned out, I could say, you know, because it was rated either as a high priority, moderate, or low priority. When someone had a low priority, I thought that's great as long as it wasn't a low high priority going into a moderate priority. And so it's a bunch of questions that comes out by being on a chart, and you chart out your answers, and it shows your health snapshot in present time, the book does, and it's written in street language. So I changed the verbiage in all the questions so that an 11-year-old could understand it. Because an 11-year-old actually edited my book and highlighted any word he didn't understand. I thought that was, you know, since I was going to say that, I should have some proof of that.
That's genius.
And so I had this, you know, when I look at someone's health chart in here, I'm looking at, like, you know, where's your weakest link, which would be your highest score, and where's your strongest link, and what do you got going for you, and what do you have going against you. And then you look at making a plan, because if there's more than one area that's a high priority, you've got to choose. So you've got to choose your most evil twin and go after, like, the big guy. And because you have to take care of symptomatology while if you're working on a big issue with somebody, you want to get rid of some of the symptoms, or people don't feel like they're having any success. You know, so, you know, and so in doing that, you're able to target, you know, an organ that might be blowing out your immune system ultimately, like we see in COVID virus. I mean, there's people who have the COVID virus, a lot of them have very weak immune systems, or they have some level of immune system, but there's something else going on in the body. Are you familiar with the Swiss watch principle?
I don't think so. Why does that sound? I'm not. That sounds like something I've heard before, but I don't know. I would say no.
Okay, well, the Swiss watch principle, if you look at how the body works, the body controls and coordinates all functions of your body. It's done by the brain. Okay. So each organ system is controlled by the brain. Okay. So if you have, in a Swiss watch, all the components have got to work together, right? So when you have one that's starting to lag, it's going to affect how the rest of the watch works.
Yes.
So it's the same thing in your body. So if you have a cardiovascular system that's starting to lag, what happens is that it can affect the liver detox system. It can affect the gut. It can affect, you know, your energy level. And it affects this, there's this whole array of things that can happen.
Yeah.
And like in 1988 or something like that, the association, the Cardiac Association for America, or whatever that's called, they gave people, they wanted them to start taking aspirin because they thought it was going to be a good thing for them. And what happens is that aspirin is very good for the heart, but it's not good for your blood vessels. So the circulatory system pays for that ultimately.
Gotcha.
It's just like some of those like little things.
So what's good for this is not good for something else, right? I mean, is that basically what you're saying?
It can be.
Yeah, so there's always a reaction. It's always, I get it. Go ahead.
So like, one of the sources I use a lot is the Mayo Clinic, for looking at their contraindications, because they actually really spell out things for people a little bit better than I've seen other places. Because they give a primary, a secondary, a tertiary, issue about, this is a contraindication for this, or this is a, when you're looking at the possibility of taking a drug, And this is what the side effects of this drug are known. And they tell you what levels they are. So a lot of times when you go into a pharmacy, you only get a fact sheet.
Gotcha.
And the fact sheet's not very thorough as to what other possibilities there are. And, that could affect you. It depends. So you can have something, you can seemingly look like you're in great health, but you could have things lurking below the surface that have taken time to accumulate.
Yeah.
So the book is called Sick, Fat, and Tired, right? Why are you sick, fat, and tired?
Right.
And every once in a while, someone says, I'm not sick, I'm not fat, and I'm not tired. But I thought, well, that's great, because the average person looks in the mirror to see if they're fat or not. And right? It's just like, by your clothes not fitting you anymore.
Sure.
And then if you're tired, it's like, that's a given, but people don't know when they're sick. So the iceberg, you don't know how deep the iceberg goes. You don't know what's lurking below the surface that needs to be attended to. So to me, it would be a really great idea to find out what is lurking below the surface and do something about it now, and not wait till it becomes a burden, and becomes a crisis.
Yeah, my father just had a kidney removed, actually, because he wasn't feeling good for a long time. And I think what happens with a lot of people is they just accept that either they're going to feel like this because they're getting older, or they're going to accept feeling like that because it's just it's fear of not wanting to hear, the news, possibly going to the doctor. It's almost like I'm going to deal with this situation the way it is now, instead of maybe improving on it or hearing if it's news, just like I said, if it's worse news than I even thought. And I think he was always there.
Right. Well, because in a lot of, background in Western medicine and how they've done things is they always had that fear. People don't like going to the doctors because they always think they're going to hear something bad.
Of course.
Or they're going to have to take another drug, or they're going to find out something new that they have to put on their agenda to deal with. So people usually kind of have that, what I call Grim Reaper syndrome. Mm-hmm. They have signs and symptoms and they don't pay attention to them.
Of course, yeah.
And then what happens is that they start to becoming more frequent, and you always have the person that asks, their friend or their family, like, oh, you know what, I don't feel good lately. Like, I'm feeling really bloated, and they go, oh, that happened to me when I was your age. It goes away.
Sure.
But what you realize is that you just taken on a new normal.
Of course.
And that new normal doesn't go away. And there's is that level of inflammation, and it's like, and you got to take a look at, well, how do people get sick in the first place, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I also think people from a financial standpoint get afraid to go to the doctors because even if they have insurance, they still think they may have to pay for things that are out of network, out of pocket, and all these type of things. So when they think of going to a doctor, it's not just for health reasons to better themselves. They think of, how much money is this going to cost me to keep this up if it's the news I don't desire?
Well, I was just reading, I don't have those numbers directly in front of me. I was just reading yesterday, like the average cost of Alzheimer's is something like $47,000 per person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's either direct or indirect costs, the combination of it. So people spend money on a lot of things that relate to their health, but they don't spend it necessarily wisely, but they still spend the money, which is, when you're looking at, like, how does somebody pay for a lot of these things? Like nutrition is not paid for by insurance companies. But the cost of, there's a statistic I read about a year ago that said that it was by the year 2030, 50% of our American population will have been diagnosed or will be diagnosed with a chronic illness or disease.
It's crazy.
Financially, it's crazy. It's an incredibly huge burden. Also,
I had a daughter that had a liver transplant. I also have another daughter that has type 1 diabetes. So I get the medical expense situation, not because of myself personally. I've been very fortunate. But on their end, it's been unbelievable as far as expense-wise goes regarding many different things, including operations, again, what's in network, out of network.
Right.
And I think too, back to what you're saying regarding your book, I've seen this with even my father and a lot of people that are older, my grandparents, aunts, uncles. I have a very massive family. And again, when it comes to men, I should say, a lot of times what's that stat? After the age of either 30 or 40 years old, they gain like an average pound a year, I think. And they only go to the doctors, say from like 40 to say 70 years old. A few times, let's just say. They kind of quit going for checkups. They kind of lose an interest in what sometimes they look like to a certain degree. They don't care if they get heavy. They let themselves go a little bit. And that's when you start to hear a lot of these men having heart attacks or strokes or things in that nature, right?
Right. Well, you have to, and I always used to, when I had patients, my practice when I was on Cape Cod, I would talk to people because this was a vacation area then, and they was like, oh, I'm feeling fine now. And I said, fine, frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and unstable. I said, you have to take a look at that part of being sick doesn't happen automatically. Very rarely. Trauma happens quickly, but not necessarily being sick. It takes a while for that to come up. And, you mentioned an interesting fact that, it's like the age is probably 40, more 40 than 35, but could be 35 now based upon how poor the American diet is. But these people will eat how their parents ate.
I agree 100%. You're programmed by what you grew up eating. That's comfort.
Right.
Yes.
And so when you eat how your parents ate, you've got to expect, they go, oh, it's a genetic predisposition. Well, it might be, but how do you explain people in part of your family who have one thing and don't have the other thing? Right? It's just like somebody has heart disease and someone has diabetes.
Absolutely.
How do you explain that? Because you all have, quote unquote, the same gene pool. So it's how your genes are expressing themselves in the environment. That's why I say you're not 100%. Necessarily your gene. You have to have, it's like a rose bush. A rose bush blooms. It doesn't all bloom at one time. Yeah. It blooms in stages given the environment that it's in. So that it isn't, I think it's important to, when you're looking at your health, it's important not to name your disease.
Interesting.
And the reason for that is because it isn't necessarily what you got that's a problem. The problem is, it's just like, it's not, you have to ask yourself why. What is it in my lifestyle and in my environment and in my diet that's contributing and making this a problem to begin with? That's the big question, because then you can address, you can, break it down and chunk it down so that it's more digestible. So so what does that mean? Does that mean I have to, I'm not as hydrated? When I used to see injury cases from people playing sports, is usually because they were too dehydrated.
Sure.
And that is, that was one of the bigger things, or it's from trauma. And then recovery, you have to have the hydration too. So and it's important. So if you're looking at in today's world where you have, chemtrails and you have, pollutants in your air, water, everything that you touch, then you've got to take a look at how you can support being in a situation where you can eliminate some of those things, like cleaning products, and the such. I know of a product coming to market shortly, and that particular product removes 26 heavy metals, because heavy metals is a big problem in the United States. Heavy metals and other pesticides and chemicals and treatments for insects, insecticide. There's the FDA only requires you to have 4 on a label. And this particular product actually on the street level part of it, not the doctor level part of it, removes 26 of them.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty cool as a dietary supplement, because we have so much exposure to it.
Sure.
And then you are not what you eat, you are what you have the ability to absorb.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So how many people do you know that want to do a detox?
Not many.
Not many? Really?
No.
I always had people ask me about detox.
No, I don't get that at all, really. You know, back to your environment, which is interesting, because I grew up in an Italian household. My mother's an amazing chef. She had to eat or make everything fresh. Literally would go to the grocery store almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it came to like, I would bounce between Florida and Chicago throughout my life.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now you're in a different state, in a totally different environment. And it reminds me of my buddies too, who went to college. You know, you start picking up bad habits. And then depending again in the area that you're in, you start eating according to not only the area, it's the people you hang around with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you work, the location of where you work, all these different types of things. Because Florida is really a fast food. I think it's the fast food capital of the world, actually. Orlando, actually. One of them is. I think Orlando is. And then you go to Chicago, and not saying that that's very healthy either, because then all of a sudden it's like Italian beef sandwiches, sausage, hot dogs, burgers. They're really known for great comfort food, but a lot of it's very heavy. So I kind of found myself bouncing between two not necessarily very healthy environments to a certain degree, unless you went out of your way. So anyways, that was just something that I had to fight a lot of times, because I loved working out, but I can tell when I'm in Chicago the way I'm eating. Actually, wherever I travel, if I'm there for a long period of time, I can tell the difference on how I feel compared to what I'm eating within that environment. It could be even Boston, for instance. I'm eating a lot of seafood, even though I'm in Little Italy. And then the next thing you know, I could be in Oklahoma, hypothetically, and I'm eating a bunch of steaks because they got great steakhouses. And, you know, I don't think people really understand that even when they go on vacation or wherever they go, everything they're eating has an effect on you.
You have microbiomes, you know, in your system. So when you change your environment, you know, I always tell people to travel with activated charcoal. And the reason for that is exactly what you're explaining. Because a lot of times you can go like, oh, I haven't had a steak in a long time. And I used to teach people how to portion out, so that if you want to eat steak and you want to have, you know, steak, then you want to have vegetables with it and not a potato.
Gotcha.
You know, and it's just like those potatoes with like sour cream in them, butters. It's like cinnamon. So good, aren't they?
Yeah, right.
But if you have one of them, it's probably fine.
Right.
If you have two of them, and if you're in an area for a while, you know, then you might have more of a physical reaction to that, and your digestive system has to change in order to process that. So I always tell people to travel with activated charcoal, and because it helps move those things along, and helps get any toxins that you might not be familiar with, your internal part of your body. It helps move those along out of your body also.
Don't you think most people neglect the way they feel after eating, or regarding many things in their life? Wouldn't you say that's one of the biggest components, because they just don't pay attention in themselves? They're not self-aware to realize.
Well, one thing I think that you're pretty correct with that, because a lot of people don't give a lot of conscious thought to the foods that they eat, or to honor the foods that they eat. So that when you have, you know, it's like if you go, you know, you've been to Italy a lot. So I've been to Italy a lot. I know that when I go to dinner, it's a 3-hour experience. No matter where I go.
I got you.
You know, unless you're fast fooding it or something like that. But people here don't have they're not social. They don't have that, you know, you're not lingering over your food and over conversation. So if you eat when you're angry, you know, or you're anxious, your food's not going to digest very well, because those emotions go directly to your stomach. You know, someone like, oh, I've just got a gut feeling. You know, that gut feeling's there for a particular reason. You know, and so and then there's a lot of your immune system that's related to your gut.
Of course.
So, you know, and you can eat foods that chemically don't go very well together, which will make you not feel well either. You know, so your attitude towards food, you know, and your attitude towards foods has to be more than I'm eating it just because I want to live. You know, and it's feeding that purpose.
And also, I think how, like you're talking about too, the way people eat, their habits, good or bad. Some eat too fast, right? Some also even the mixing of different things. It could be alcohol. It could be even incorporating smoking after you eat. It can incorporate many different things. And I think a lot of times what becomes kind of fun and social ends up becoming a bad habit as well, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, for some of the things, so like when you have, and you're looking at like, complementing a meal, it's just like when I'm making dinner and I want to complement a meal,
Sure.
I don't always have a sweet at the very end of it.
Sure.
And I always like, and if I have a glass of wine with my meal, I always, if the wine doesn't taste right with the food that I'm eating, I don't drink the wine.
Right.
So a lot of times when you go out in the States, they don't know why they're ordering that Cabernet or that Merlot or that, Malbec, and it might taste very acid, which will interfere with how your food digests. I mean, even taking it one step beyond that, they now know that people who have mental illness diseases, a lot of that comes from their gut.
Yeah.
And it's not from the brain, it's from the
Yes.
gut. And, so there's that whole emotional component that you brought up is so interesting and it's so diverse, that you can pick a portion to talk about.
Yeah, and I did a podcast with my buddy Chris Thompson. He's a genius, that dude, with nutrition and everything. I have not posted it yet. I think you two would get along really well. And one thing he talks about as well is people being programmed to say, okay, it's 8 a.m. I'm hungry. I have to eat. Okay, it's noon. I have to eat. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. I have to eat. The reality is that is not the truth a lot of times. A lot of times we're eating right when we're not hungry, or we're forcing foods down. We're forcing down certain amounts of portions. All these different types of things back to programming our minds. Again, I fall into always talking about self-awareness because I was very big for like 20 years. I wanted to be very big. I was between 235 to 250 pounds. And I would eat a lot of food. I didn't do it with any really type of supplements. I just ate like an animal. But I knew what worked for me and what didn't work for me when it came to nutrition. I knew what was going to give me a stomach ache. I knew what wasn't. I knew if I ate at this time, what my type of workout would be. I knew if I ate at this time in the morning, I feel like this. If I ate late at night, all these different types of things. I studied my own body, and I talk about it all the time that you have to be a scientist towards yourself, because none of us lead the same life, right? Yeah. No one leads the same life. I talk about it all the time. None of us have the same job, usually do the same hours, eat the same food, go to bed the same time, all that, all those type of things. And you got to take responsibility for yourself if you want to. I think a lot of people really don't give a shit if they feel good or bad. They just kind of want to have, they just want to do whatever they want to do after a certain amount of time.
Well, it's truly about convenience for those people, but the problem is that those people wake up like 10 years later, and they have, major problems. I know of a story of a woman who had blood in her stools for 10 years, and she tried different things. So she tried the Western medicine route, and she tried an alternative route, and some things work and they work for a while, but nothing really got handled with why was she having blood in her stools. They finally came up with and told her that she needed to have a bag, and she had 6 kids. And so she asked the doctor, she goes, can I go swimming? He said, no. Can I play with my kids? Probably you don't want them pulling on the side where the bag's at, and so she goes, I'm going to go research something else. So what she did, and this is a true story, this is a patient of a friend of mine and colleague. So she went to this person. This person said, let's find out what foods that you're sensitive to. You're talking about the gut, and like, what is that for a good concept? And so she found out, and the reason why she was bleeding is because she was eating her favorite food, which was avocados. And so every time she ate an avocado, it created more inflammation.
Oh,
So when talking about people who like eat a variety of things, they don't realize the repercussions of that poor diet down the road. Luckily for her, she stopped eating avocado, and a year later, when you looked at her colonoscopy, it was clean. And Western medicine goes, wow, it's so great that we didn't have to do surgery. but the point is that there's things that are small irritants, and that if you let them go, it's like having a sliver under your finger and find, oh, I'm going to leave that sliver in there instead of take it out. And I think what people have a huge dilemma about is like, okay, so let's say I do that. How do I make food? I don't know what kind of food to make, and I don't know how to get it's just like I have these, like there's, when you do like a food reactivity, like called ELSA test, or there's food reactivity tests out there that you can go in someplace and have them done. It tells you the foods that you definitely can't eat. And it tells you foods that are, very irritating, and then the ones that are very available to you that you can eat as much as you want. And so the idea is to get, for sure, you got to cut out the ones that are the big culprits, and the ones that are irritants, you want to get rid of those too. Yeah. So there's an app out there for people who get that far called Yummly. It's Yummly, which you can put those foods that you don't like or you can't eat, and it creates recipes for you so you don't have to eat them.
Wow.
That's a great app.
That's amazing. Well, thanks for that information.
Yeah. And so, it's just like when I'm working with somebody and I pull one of those tests out, then you'll always get to the person who says, I can't give that up. Yeah. Then I go, I'm not going to work with you. Because, it's like, I can't keep on putting the Band-Aid on something.
I gotcha.
Or else until it gets broken. And by the time it gets broken, you're going to have much bigger problems than if you just went through the process of giving that up and getting it out of your diet.
It's so interesting. I don't even know if I ever told anyone this, but when I was younger, I had a big leap from like 135, 140 pounds to like 210, 220 in like a year and a half. It's like it was like I hit double puberty. I hit puberty like at 19 years old. I grew 4 inches. I started taking supplements back in the late 80s. And I started to do gainers drinks. And I also did like these animal packs they would have, and all different types of, I was trying just different things, I guess, to a certain degree, natural sterile complex. And I gained all that weight, and I was eating as well. And I felt good, but all of a sudden I started to like spit up blood. And at first I said, what the hell's going on here? Is it something is something wrong with me as far as that goes? First I said, well, let me go to the dentist. Maybe it's my gums or something. Everything was fine. I went to the doctor. It looked like everything was fine. But when I was starting to take gainers drink too, I started to realize like I never would throw up that much throughout my entire life. I would drink and then it would come up on me, or I would eat something and something kept coming up on me. And I said, I don't feel good now on these supplements either. And this went on for like a year. I eventually just said, I'm not going to take any supplements at like 21, 22 years old. I was very afraid because I thought I would lose all my size, lose strength. But I said, I'm going to start eating a steak a day, a lot more chicken. I'm going to do smoothies instead of gainers, go that route. And it worked out really well for me. I don't know why I was spitting up blood to this day. No one could figure it out. And it's very interesting because, again, I don't know if my body was just rejecting something regarding those supplements or not. But I think a lot of people go through things where there's a lot of fear as far as like either quitting something that they like, because they see the effects there a lot of times, again, smoking, drinking, obesity or whatever. But it also, like those supplements gave me a lot of comfort. And it was almost like a placebo effect as well. I felt by getting rid of those actually made me feel bad, even though my health was going in the wrong direction. Now, I'm not saying supplements did that to me wholeheartedly, but whatever I was doing at that point in time wasn't working for me. And I had to make a huge change, which was giving up the one thing that I loved taking the most, that I thought was giving me the best results. So it's kind of different than a lot of people, I should say, that are like smoking or drinking. We kind of know it gives you cancer. It could give you liver cirrhosis. In my case, I thought it was helping myself. And I think people fall in that category where actually you're hurting yourself, is what I should say.
Right. Well, that happens a lot because people were told that, you know, like there's, you know, one year they told you not to eat oatmeal, you know, and then they told you that you should eat oatmeal. And then now they're back to saying that you should have oatmeal. And the oatmeal now is like loaded with Monsanto's like Roundup, which is carcinogenic. And so, you know, like you have different varying reports throughout the years, what's good for you and what's not good for you. Mm-hmm. And so it's confusing for people. So people are more comforted, I think, by staying with what they know, even though it's not good for them, than researching it out. Yes. Or, you know, finding out, like, you know, is there something else I can do that gives me the same result? And
yeah, that's what I did. Right.
And so when you get to a certain point, I mean, like I took a product called Isogenics one time, and I was okay with it the first 2 months. The third month going in, I started having severe stomach pain. And it was an hour or so after I ate it, and then I drank it. And then, you know, and I was taking 3 different supplements of theirs, and I felt good on it until I drank that one day. It was this game changer. I didn't wait for the next month. You know, I stopped taking it right away. And I said, now I have to go heal my gut because I have created this other problem that wasn't a problem before I started using that particular supplement. What I found out from that supplement and from doing a food allergy test is that I am allergic to turmeric, you know, and like turmeric and cumin is something that doesn't I don't even like the smell of them, but but it was in there on a certain product. There's another supplement that has it in it also that I took that, you know, I did well on it for a while. You know, and then I went back and I said, there's got to be something else in here. What are the inert ingredients? And inert ingredients are always good for someone to take a look at, because a lot of those have side effects that people go, oh, it's nothing. You know, well, it's something if you take them for 10 years. Yeah. You know, and so you have to take a look at what the inert ingredients are in products also. Things that help them bind. There's things that you don't have to use for binding purposes in a lot of supplements. There's a different delivery system for them. So, you know, when you're looking at, you know, that issue and that problem with people, you have to it's like, you know, I always ask somebody the question is, are you willing to do what it takes to be healthy? You know, and then you always have got to work on the mindset, because that mindset is what keeps people trapped into repetitious behavior that's really quite dangerous for them. You know, it's like we talked a little bit on the telephone about my passion to help women with their health. And the reason why I have that passion is because I always see women not taking care of themselves. They take care of their husband, the dog, the cat, their mother, their father, their friend next door. Everyone gets to go before them, before they take care of themselves. And then they wake up at around 40, 50, 60 with some other thing going on that's not pretty. And then all of a sudden everything stops and they have to go back and they have to take care of that. And they're trying the whole time is that I don't want to be a burden, but they end up, you know, being like, you know, pulling in other people in order to help them, because they need the help in order to go from point A to point C. So that whole thing about eating food when it's not good for you, I mean, I just implore people to really do research. If you don't understand what you're looking at, you can always call me.
Yeah, I think what happens with a lot of people, and a lot of people come to me for fitness advice or all these different types. I am by no means a nutritional expert, or fitness expert. Let's not get crazy here. I do know a lot about working out and things in that nature. But I think what happens with most people, and this could go for any age, from my young cousins, nieces, nephews, and from 15 all the way to 80, I think they get nervous and overwhelmed when you start to talk about nutrition or different types of workouts, they think it's very complicated and complex when they can simplify it. But I think especially with, say, YouTube and with meeting someone like possibly like yourself, or they go into a gym and they're talking to a trainer, they become very intimidated, I guess you could say, especially like my aunts, uncles, and the elderly, I guess you could say, to a certain degree, and even middle-aged, my buddies that are 50, 60, 70 that really never worked out. You start to talk about certain things and they're almost in shock. Like, that sounds like a lot of complicated. I don't feel like changing my diet. I don't care how I feel. Those workouts sound too advanced. It sounds like I don't have the time for it. There's always kind of, I'm not saying excuses, it's back to fear. But if people put as much time into learning about their health as they did about anything else, which could be, I don't care if they watch Netflix.
Avoiding it?
Yeah, exactly. They could put in hours of time of watching football on Saturday and Sunday. I say guys, I'm just using for an example. They could put all this time into learning about, different teams, different things going on, and they have all these memorization skills regarding all these other things. But when it comes to taking care of their own health and just changing their way of life a little bit to make themselves feel and look better, it's like I think they get scared, or they just get lazy, I should say.
They're scared, and I think they are lazy. So I'd have to, but a lot of people, when I go into a grocery store, and when I go into a real grocery store, I'm always looking at what people put together for food.
Yeah.
And then, like if I see a parent that has like Cheerios in their cart, or Ritz crackers, things like that, I was like, do you know how many, parts per billion of glycophosphates are in there? And because people don't ever read the label. Remember when you were a kid?
I get it.
You had your cereal box in front of you, and you knew every word on that cereal box.
Yeah.
And because they always had a story or something like that, a prize inside, for you. So, when you got
photos,
to the bottom of the cereal, photos
maps,
or something
everything
to look at. And so people, their attention span's so short, that, the impact of them, like really taking advantage of, like, hey, what is it that I need to do? Like there's, if somebody's taking, they have to take an antibiotic for some reason. It's just like, well, how do you avoid having other complications from that? Either bleeding, because you can have bleeding in the gut, but you can also depletes the other microbes that are in the microbiome regime. So just like, what kind of probiotic can I have? So people say, they go, well, go take yogurt, for instance. So yogurt, usually has sugar in it. And sugar is not the thing that you want to eat if you want to have an anti-inflammatory diet. And it's like something that always feels good to people. It's a drug of choice, so to speak, in food.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't get people to the point of like where they're really functioning at a higher level, to be able to, utilize the foods that they eat. It isn't like you can't ever have sugar, but people have it. It's hidden in so many foods. The food industry should be ashamed of itself.
And drinks, food and drink, beverage, everywhere. Liquor, I don't care where it's at.
Yep. It's like, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I realize too with a lot of people, as far as nutrition goes, again, and I'm not a nutritional expert, but a lot of people, let's say Whole Foods, for instance, or certain places they could go and shop to get healthier foods, they look at it as an expense. And it is a lot of times more expensive, I think, depending on what they're getting. So I think that's also a thing to say, you know what, I'm not going to go spend X amount of dollars for this, regardless if it's healthier or not. I'll just kind of go the way I've been going about it. And I could see that to a certain degree, especially if you're on a certain type of budget. And I've seen over the years that it is at the point where the healthier you want to eat a lot of times, and this goes for restaurants as well, the more expensive it is. It is a lot cheaper to say, do fast food. It is a lot cheaper to go to a certain type of grocery store. I don't want to name them. that just have lower quality food, possibly, fruits, vegetables, and all those things. And, you know, you only have that type of budget, and that's the only way you can eat is that way. And it's the only way you've been also programmed to eat, like we discussed earlier a little bit, or cook, as I would say. So a lot of people only know how to cook a certain type of food a certain way, regardless if it's healthy or not, but they've been doing it their whole life. And it's cheap, right? I've seen that with a lot of my aunts growing up, my great aunts, I should say, that grew up in the Depression, and my great grandmothers with pastas and Italian foods. Mm-hmm. They were always spreading the food, right? To show me different ways on how you could feed a lot of people very affordably. And I think, how do you work with people in that case and say, hey, you know, your health is worth it. You got to eat better foods. You got to learn how to cook differently. You got to learn different recipes. Is that what you do with these people?
Well, I'm thinking of a particular person who had a financial situation and when she was trying to create a certain health result. And so depending upon, and so she couldn't afford to buy the medical food drink that I wanted her to do. So I said, okay, so let's do it by food instead. So I said, so you're going to have to like wash your fruits and vegetables better. In fact, I'd prefer if you don't eat so much fruit, and you need to choose your food wisely. So if you have a choice of buying organic or buying GMO, I would tell anybody it's worth your health because you'll pay a lot more money to recover from eating GMO foods for a long period of time.
Yes.
Then, because their effect is accumulatory.
Yeah.
Then you will if you spent the extra $2, and when I talk to those people, I always ask them if they ever go to Starbucks and buy coffee.
I do.
So I said, what kind of coffee do you buy? And they'll go like, oh, I buy blah, blah, blah. How much does your coffee cost you?
Yeah.
And, they'll say like, oh, like $6.50, $5.50, whatever. And then I will go like, well, do you buy eggs? I do. And I said, so do you buy organic eggs? They go like, well, no, they're too expensive. Mm-hmm. And I said, like, there's 12 eggs and they're costing you $5.50 to $6. I said, and the value of those 12 eggs will last you a lot longer than your coffee that has sugar in it. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you're going down the path and you're going like, okay, I want to go the fast route or I want to go the scenic route, for food. So you're like, if you go the fast route, you're doing, like Jolly Rogers, Jack in the Box, McDonald's. And McDonald's isn't cheap. If you go to get a burger at, I walked in there just about a month ago because I was curious. The hamburger place that's the big guys,
Five Guys.
like
Five Guys burgers, yeah.
Yeah. And it was like $8-10 for a burger, and I'm thinking, well, and I said, I'm not going to pay $8 for a burger in a place like this. It didn't have any value for me.
Right.
And so what I do is I really try to teach people about like, are you willing to do what it takes to be healthy? And if so, here's a couple steps that you need to do. If you're on a money crunch, then you have to do the best that you can do. But like things that are your pops or your, those, you can time for Michigan, right?
Yeah, pop.
Pop.
Soda.
You want to get rid of those sugar things out of there, and look for obvious ways that you can cut back. It's just like, if you're going to buy bread, it's just like, you don't have to eat bread. If you're Italian, you do because you got a scarpetta to the plate, right? But it's just like you can buy better quality foods and spend a couple extra bucks and make them last longer. You can grow vegetables in your backyard. You can grow them in your front yard.
Yeah.
Only in Florida, I think I've seen that somebody got arrested for that or something like that they really had a garden in their front yard and they were told they had to change it.
Wow.
Did you know that? That was last about a year or so ago.
No, I never heard of that. I live in Florida. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. What was I going to ask you? I think what happens though with people and what you're saying is I think they get afraid because they have to be all in Instead of just saying, if you want a burger, though, once in a while, have a burger. But just start small. I tell people, even with fitness, you do not have to, working out or eating or anything, especially fitness, you don't have to go 5-7 days a week. You could start off going twice a week, maybe even 3. Or if you're not even ready for that, start walking. Go for a bike ride. I don't care if you go hiking, go swimming.
I tell people who don't want to work out to walk as fast as they can, as far as they can, for as long as they can every day.
Yeah. Just start there. Start with anything.
The first thing you do when you get up, hydrate.
For sure.
Drink water. Have water by your bed. Hydrate. If you, start out doing something very positive for yourself. Create a ritual. Because if you have a ritual,
a healthy ritual,
then you're more successful.
Absolutely.
So if you get up and you have something to drink, water, and then go out and take your walk. Do you have to get up maybe a half hour before then? Maybe. But you're going to be more productive. You're going to feel better, and you're going to sleep better. So like the 5 facets of health is diet, exercise, proper sleep, proper mental attitude, and properly functioning nervous system, which is structure, function, biomechanics. So, when getting diet, when I had my practice and I would talk to them about diet, people's faces went from smiling to at the very end going, Dr. Pat, what do I eat? And you eat things that, combine well with each other. You can find tons of combining food combination charts on Google. One that's easy for you to assimilate, because everyone reads different. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, and some people are feeling. Find the one that works for you to create that ritual, and then put foods together that chemically go together very well, that your body can utilize. So because food is energy, and you're feeding your spirit, you're feeding your soul.
Absolutely.
And the exercise portion of it, I'm not a big gym person, but I like bikes, and I like, and so when and exercise for people, and this too, has got to be, it has to be convenient, right?
Yeah,
so it has to say, if it's not convenient, people don't do it.
Yeah.
Unless they're in a crisis.
Yeah.
Then they make it convenient. So it's just like, it's hard to get people to, the benefits of eating well, thinking well, and doing well, all start with, that basic, you've got to honor yourself as a sanctuary.
Absolutely.
And
you got to do it independently. Nobody else can do it for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, people could cook your meals, but they're not going to physically take care of you.
Right.
I mean, your own health.
And there's things that you can, you can read something that's positive every day.
Yeah.
It's just like, what do I have to be grateful for? That people always do that when crap hits the fan in your health, business, whatever it is, you always got to go back to basics.
Yeah, absolutely. I say the same thing.
It's the same. It's like, so what, what do I have to be grateful for? If you can't figure something out, read a book about it. It's just, or listen to a book about it.
Absolutely.
You can walk and listen to a book at the same time, and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. But my second patient was 92 years old when she came to see me when I was a student doctor. And I don't remember her name. I always called her Grandma. But she said, I asked her, I said, well, what do you do for exercise? Because that's a question that doctors always ask patients. And she said, well, honey, I live in an area. She was in Atlanta, Georgia, with that beautiful Southern accent. And she said, I take my Dixie cup and I go out and I water my garden. And I said, well, how many plants do you have? And she said, 150.
Wow.
And she said she was too nervous to walk around in her neighborhood anymore because it was changing. So she would take her Dixie cup out and she would go water her garden. So she would get that exercise. Exercise is other things too. It's cleaning the house.
Yeah, for sure.
It's doing other activity. It doesn't have to be like
movement.
It doesn't have to be punishment.
No, it does not have to be at a gym.
Right.
You don't have to be sore the next day or feel destroyed or feel dehydrated.
Yeah.
What you're talking about too, a lot of times I look at people and I relate it to identity, because we all fall into a certain identity with our friends, colleagues, and family members. Even it could be a smoking break, or it could be happy hour. It could be Sunday football again, sitting around all day. It could be all these things that we don't realize too that have become unhealthy habits with others. But it's tough because, back to identity, if you start saying, hey, I want to quit smoking, I kind of lose that relationship, not entirely, with that friend, or doing something that I thoroughly enjoy doing with them. Again, smoking, drinking, eating shitty foods, going to, again, bars. And again, I am not anti any of that in moderation. But when it becomes more and more and more, but even within households, I think people take on an identity with their kids. And say, for instance, they cook shitty foods, or they get a lot of junk food. All of a sudden they say, hey, I want to kind of start living a healthier life. But their kids don't want to accept that. Their husband or their wife don't want to accept that lifestyle now. So back to fear a little bit. I think people, and I talk about this all the time with confidence, because I try to teach people about confidence. The truth is, you got to have confidence in yourself to make changes. You have to evolve. The way you ate yesterday may not be the way you're going to eat tomorrow. Also, you're going to fall off the wagon. You're not always going to have great days regarding eating, working out, nutrition, dieting, whatever you want to say. You're going to have good times and bad times through these times.
Well, they say habits, some habits die hard. Creating a new habit, it can be exciting at the very beginning. And people usually, like at the beginning of the year for those New Year's resolutions, people, by the time February 14th comes around, those New Year's resolutions go out the drain. So it's like people, when they have that fear, a lot of times they set their expectation a lot higher than what they're at. Like, if you have an expectation, I want to go out and I want to make, $2 million this year, but you're working at a job that's not going to support that, it's going to set you up for failure.
Absolutely.
So, when I work with people, I really help them, I ask them, I work with them well, what kind of foods do you like? Let me show you how to combine those foods, and you start there and you work. So there isn't that fear, and there isn't I can't do it, and the less ingredients, the better, that whole spiel, to help people put the pieces of the puzzle together. So it isn't overwhelming, because when people get overwhelmed or confused, they don't do anything.
Absolutely.
They can't take that knowledge and they can't apply it to the next thing down the road. They can't apply it to if I go out, then I'm going to eat bread. Well, it's simple. Tell the waitress, could you please not, I'm on a special diet. Can you please not bring me any bread? Get the temptation out of your face. When you go to a grocery store, only shop on the aisles that you walk up and down on, for things like, detergent, and for things that, clean, that you might need to clean your house,
right? Or
buy them online. But all your foods in a grocery store are on the perimeter that you could and you'll get in and out of a grocery store. Instead of it taking you 2 hours, you can get out of there in probably 30 minutes buying the things that you need to have. And it's also taking the responsibility to say no appropriately to foods that are going to harm you. So if something's going to harm you, it's just like, a loaded gun, if I shoot it, if I take it and point it to myself and I pull the trigger, and there's not a safety on it, I'm going to get hurt. Sure. So if you take food that's going to harm you ultimately, it's just like, it should have that same effect thinking wise. One's immediate and the other one's long term. So you always feel like, well, I can have it this time. It's like people who give up bread. They go back and they have bread one time, then they have 2 pieces of bread, then they're eating bread like they were eating it before, or pasta or beer or whatever it is. Right. Whatever that vice is. It's hard for people to make those changes. They have to have a mindset shift, a paradigm shift, and what they see for their future. And they have to know what their why is.
Yeah, of course.
It's because when you know what your why is, then, making better lifestyle choices after being educated about them is a pretty easy job.
Yeah, and I think people got to realize too, they're a lot more vain than they say they are. this may sound crazy, but the truth is they're always like, no, I don't want to lose weight to look better. I just want to lose weight to be healthier. No, you be honest on the approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say you do want to look better, you're losing weight. It could be a woman saying, I want to be this size again. Be honest. You want to be that size because it makes you look thinner and you want to wear those type of clothes now. Same with guys, especially guys. They're almost, after they hit middle age, they're like, who gives a shit how I look? I'm married. I got 3 kids, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you kind of do give a shit because you won't take your shirt off at the beach or at the pool. So you're kind of bullshitting yourself. Not only that, if you do have a big belly, it's unhealthy. And I'm not saying you got to have a 6-pack. And I do think people think they have to go to the extreme. I got so many friends, family members, colleagues, they'll watch a documentary and the next week they're a vegetarian or they're a vegan or they change their whole life that week. And you're back to New Year's resolution. I'm like, can you just back up on your food portions? Let's just start with that. Let's not this week bullshit everybody and say, I'm eating healthy this week. We can only go to healthy restaurants now. I quit drinking. You're like, you've done this 10 times throughout your life. How many times are we going to go through this? How about you just back up on your drinks, right? I'm just saying, let's maybe just have a drink on a weekend or just one once in a while. Why do we all of a sudden go to the extreme? Because it's ridiculous. And I think a lot of
people don't know what moderation is. And they don't know. And they don't know what moderation, and they don't know how to apply moderation in their life. You have the variety is very, like, in the Mediterranean diet, the plate should be colorful. You're eating a meat or a protein, a chicken with vegetables, and you're having a little bit of oil on something, and so that you digest that kind of food a lot better than you do. But people don't think that they can do that themselves. Yeah. It's like, is it a self-esteem issue? Not
interested.
Not interested because they can get it down the street. They can go to Sweet Pea and get a salad, and have some things in it. Like, I never eat fruit with vegetables. Yeah. This is something I don't do. That doesn't go together, but people eat that stuff all the time, and they don't understand why they just don't feel better after the long run, or else they try to lose weight and they can't lose weight because they're eating food that they don't know what the ingredients are, and they don't realize that there's sugar inside the ingredient, which cuts their digestion on the food that they're trying to eat. But you're right. I mean, there's people have that. They don't know how to moderate. They don't know how they lack drive to take on the responsibility for their own health. And that's a frustrating part of being a physician, period, because you keep on telling somebody to, like, hey, you got to lose weight, you got to stop smoking, you have to do X, Y, and Z, you got to change your diet, you're diabetic now, you've got to and you got diabetic, the second degree of diabetic, type 2, because of lifestyle induced things that you've done over a period of time. And there's it's almost like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I hear that, like I said before, I said it a little bit earlier about somebody who said, like, their parents have a certain disease, or that runs in my family type thing. It only runs in your family because, of that not being able to change those habits. And it's easier to stay with what somebody knows sometimes than it is to be bold, and boldly go forward and change what you need to do to change for your health, to be there for people who matters. And catch it why it's like, before it's a red flag, before it's a crisis, there's things there's always something that you can do to go from point A to point C. Like, all roads go to Rome, right? But you don't take the same way every time.
No, in our surroundings, I would bounce between Florida, Chicago, and California, right? And Southern Cal, Carlsbad. And it was interesting, again, what lifestyle I led depending on what city I was living in. And I was almost bouncing between 3. I was almost living in 3 different cities. And it was interesting because I'm in Florida again, a lot of chain restaurants, fast food, and there's healthy food. I'm not going to say that, but they're very fitness kind of driven in Florida because you can't not be exposed in Florida. You're going to wear shorts and a t-shirt. I don't care. And you're going to probably end up at a pool and a beach or backyards. It's just that lifestyle. You can't put layers of clothes and hide. But then when you get to Southern Cal, back to Mediterranean diet, everybody in Southern Cal, at least Carlsbad and San Diego area, La Jolla, huge into fitness. You got the Navy, the Marines there. The food quantities are much smaller, very health driven, a lot more money. Call it for what it is. So if I was hanging out with guys there, it's all about let's get to the gym. They're talking about Tough Mudders, marathons, going to Kona to train for, whatever they're training for, Ironman, Hawaii. And then all of a sudden I'm in Chicago, and nothing against Chicago. I did have some friends that worked out there, but it's more or less, hey, let's go eat. Let's go have some drinks. Let's go smoke a cigar, right? It's a slower pace, not very nutritional environment, I guess you could say. You can find, of course, places to eat there that are healthy. I'm not saying, let's not get ridiculous. But a lot of my friends, family members, they were almost the flip side of what I seen, especially in California. And I saw myself falling into those. I would still go to the gym, but I would start eating a lot of unhealthy foods. I still do a lot of times, like depending on where I'm at, I will eat whatever I feel like eating. I work out hard enough, though, to kind of disguise that to a certain degree.
Right.
That works for me. But again, with people, not only identity, but who you're surrounding yourself with a lot of times has such an impact on your life that I don't think a lot of people realize it. Again, it could even be where you grocery shop, who your friends are as far as the ones that work out, don't work out, who smokes, who drinks, and I'm not telling anybody to push their friends away, but your behavior along with theirs affects everybody. And I always tell people, like, the way you eat, talk, drink, you don't realize it not only affects your immediate family members, it also affects friends and how people look at you and how they treat you. So it's kind of a whole big thing, I guess you could say.
Nobody ever wants me to go grocery shopping with them. Because I read labels. Had my sister, one time I went shopping with her, grocery shopping. She told me she was never going to a grocery store with me ever again. Because I read labels. I said, you can't eat this. This is, this item in here, this ingredient is not good for you to eat. You can eat, you can go buy this, instead. And, so people don't, and people, when I go out to eat with them, they're always picking the menu up and looking at the menu and looking at me and looking at the menu. And inevitably, I order for everybody at the table. It's just like, tell me what you want to eat, and I go, and then they go, what can I put together? I mean, it's just, and I've gone to people's houses where I've done some VIP stuff and where I've taken everything out of their cupboards or their pantries. I found a woman who had one time from 1995, she had something in her pantry and I said, this is gone. You have to, some expiration dates don't necessarily apply because they say it's better if it's eaten. Some of them just say, some of them you just got to get rid of. But 1995, when it was like 2014, I thought, you got to be kidding me. Get rid of it. So, and being people, just like one of my goals is to have people be more conscious.
Yeah.
So that
pay attention.
Pay just like, all you got to do, it doesn't take long to pay attention to something. It doesn't take any extra time, but I had to laugh when you were telling that story about no one asked me to go grocery shopping with them. Nobody asked me, it's like when I go out to eat with friends, and I always used to say, don't worry, you can eat wherever you want. You can come in tomorrow and I can fix it for you, because I go, sometimes when you eat foods, it makes some organ system that you have a sensitivity to, and not necessarily just your gut, have to work harder. And that's not working. And you want your body to work differently and more simply, and so that it can have better outcomes.
You can bullshit everybody. You can't bullshit your health. That's what I always say.
Well, Grim Reaper is right around the corner.
Yeah.
When you do.
And a lot of people that neglect their health, they usually not only pay for it physically later in life, financially they do as well. So if you're obsessed with making money, which I get that, and you want to make all this money, a lot of guys I know that made a substantial amount of money as they got older from stress and neglecting their health, they ended up spending a lot of that money right back into their health anyways.
Right.
Another way.
Well, we were talking about that before, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just like where people have, the cost of a disease and an illness.
Yeah.
I mean, food's medicine. You can start very simply just by going like, what kind of foods can I choose? If a package has more than 5 or 6 ingredients, you might want to buy, if it has more than that, you might want to not buy it.
Yeah.
If you can't pronounce an ingredient on a label, don't buy it.
Yeah.
And there's places that you can go buy fresh fish. You can go buy, there's certain fish I would not recommend people eating that have higher mercury contents in them, and my favorite fish in Florida is black grouper.
Oh yeah.
And it's so good. But like I don't ever eat when I'm in an area like in Florida. We talk about traveling and that. I don't ever eat fish from up north in Florida.
Really?
And that I just find that there's a different flavor for it.
Yeah.
And I like to eat local. I like to eat local produce. I like to eat local foods, no matter where I'm at. And it's, you can bend the rule sometimes, but you can't bend the rule all the time, or else you'll end up paying to the Grim Reaper for sure. Exercise wise, so it's just like, so leaving this on that positive note, it's just, it doesn't take a lot to really make some really minute changes in someone's diet. You have to just think about what is in something. So if you're making dressing, salad dressing, people have a tendency to buy that. There's all sorts of additives in salad dressing. You can make your own.
Right.
And they have those bottles that you can buy, and you can put different flavoring in them. You can put rosemary, you can put other herbs in them.
Experiment.
You can experiment. It's like, it's not the end of the world. If you don't like something, then either throw it out or don't do it again.
And take it slow. I think everybody thinks you have to learn everything so quickly and master things. Even I talk about losing weight or gaining weight. Take your time. If you want to learn about nutrition, take it slow. You don't have to grab a book and memorize everything you're reading, or change your entire diet again, back to that. Everything is so extreme now. Just relax and enjoy it. Find stuff you like. Even fitness-wise, if you're not doing what you love, you're not going to keep up with it. Even with nutrition or recipes, find things you love to eat, and then kind of parlay it and say, okay, how can I do this healthier? How can I get the same type of flavor? All these type of things. And I think it's just so extreme.
I think people are so stuck in their box, that, if it doesn't exist in their box of theirs, then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so, and moving forward for somebody and with their health, they have to be willing to think outside the box. Not all the answers that they know are inside their box. Some of them are outside the box. It could be acupuncture, it could be food, it could be exercise.
Absolutely. Open-minded. You got to be open-minded.
It's just
and learn.
Yeah, and do things that that make you happy.
Absolutely.
It's just like it's like, do what makes you happy, and just alter little things around that like tweak it.
Yes.
And so it's like, because people are very driven to oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do this workout. And I've got to do this so many times a week, or I've got to eat this kind of food if I want to lose weight. It's just like, move. Do things, explore things. If it doesn't work for you, you got to be willing to give it a really good try. But if it's something really doesn't work for you, there's something else to replace it. There's something that you can do. There's always something that you can do to improve your health. Health is, always in fashion. It never goes out of fashion, health.
No, I just did a video on your weaknesses, maybe your strengths, because I know you talk about weaknesses. And I think a lot of people grow up even with sports, maybe it was mainstream sports, or they weren't athletic, they were whatever, geeky, or whatever the case may be, but they were interested in certain things. They just didn't excel in that area at that point in time. That doesn't mean you can't excel later in life in certain things. And I see that with fitness a lot. Either a lot of my friends' wives, girlfriends seem to gravitate that and be a little more open-minded, where they didn't work out when they were younger, or maybe after they got married, and now they're running marathons, or now they're teaching yoga, or now they have a Pilates play. You know, they didn't even realize that they had the potential, but it's going to take time to evolve and discover all these things. And what didn't work for you in the past may not work for you, or may work for you now, is what I should say. I'm sorry. And also, just back to experimenting. A lot of guys with fitness or whatever, they're like, I don't want to go to a gym. I don't want this. I don't want that. I'm like, then go surfing. Go do something you used to love to surf. Why'd you stop? That's a great exercise, right? Yeah. And listen, I think when people think exercise, for instance, or even when they think nutrition, they think diet. When they think exercise, they immediately go, I hate running. I don't want to do sprints.
Yeah, that's the first thing.
Stairmaster, right? I don't want, who the hell said you ever got to do that? Go mountain biking. I don't care what you do. There's something out there I can assure you love. Why'd you quit playing soccer? Even a lot of my buddies, like, they all played soccer. Then all of a sudden, why'd you quit? They have leagues for guys your age, right? Go have some fun. I don't care. Go play softball. Do something, right?
Right. Absolutely. And all five of those pillars of health, you know, it's always, people get very, very locked into their I call a box, or their 9 dots. And it's like once they get out of that mode, you know, or I have somebody, you know, try something, do something, you know, do this, like, well, how can I cook, you know, fish? You know, it's just like, what's the best way to cook fish? Well, make, you know, Italian dressing, marinate it, you know, put a little bit of hot sauce in it or whatever, take it out, put it on the grill, you know, and don't burn it. And just take a look at, like, you know, portion size, you know, like how much you really need to eat, like how much makes an actual, like, complete protein for something, you know, that ounce of meat or ounce and a half of fish with a cup of vegetables with like 3 olives is like a kind of a perfect protein.
Right.
If you're going to, you know, if you want to have wine with the meal, you can have wine with the meal. It's not, you don't have to punish yourself. There's always one of my rules. You do not ever punish yourself. And there's just certain things that you do. And if you make a mistake, you just made a mistake, move on.
Yeah.
Make your next meal your best meal. I mean, if you're looking at that, just at the diet portion of that, or if you didn't exercise because I don't want to exercise, go out in the rain, you know, then do something inside the house. Jump up and down for 5 minutes or like 3 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, that, and do some stretches, do something else that makes you like, so that you're still moving. Walk up and down the steps. I mean, do some, just get out and just be active and participate in your life. Because most people do not, they let life live them as opposed to them living their life.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what happens when people get into their, what I call sinking. Like they, you know, I'm now 38, so now I'm not supposed to do X, Y, and Z anymore. Yeah. There's no limits. There's nobody keeping an eye on you. You're responsible for your own life. You're responsible for your own health.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, you've got to take care of yourself first. My father always said to me, when I went to chiropractic school, and he absolutely did not like chiropractors, but he always said, if you can't nurture yourself, you can't nurture somebody else. Yeah. So you have to be able to take good care of yourself and be willing to try different things and a variety of things. And if something works for you, share that information with other people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And, you know, don't be afraid to be yourself, but don't be a pain in the ass is what I'm going to wrap up. And back to my, you know, if you start getting nutrition, you know, all the people start getting more and more, you know, intelligent, I guess you could say, regarding health and stuff. Don't bog people down with your shit all the time and telling them what they're doing wrong. And even going out a lot. You know, my daughter has type 1 diabetes. Obviously, she's going to eat different than we do, what she eats.
Right.
And even my buddy Chris lately, I took him to a couple Italian restaurants with me. And one time he just had water or a club soda or something. We were all eating all these different pastas. We didn't have any problem with him not wanting to eat a lot of those foods. And he didn't have a problem with us eating them. And then we'd go to another restaurant with him, and then he may just do a salad with plain chicken. Do what feels best for you and just enjoy the moment. And, you know, a lot of times you may end up in a restaurant that may not be that healthy, but you can a lot of times find healthy foods, I think.
You can always find something to eat.
You can find something.
And if you don't really feel like eating, then don't eat.
Exactly. No one cares. At least I don't.
Well, unless it's somebody's mother. I had a client from overseas, and he was going home he called me up and said, I need a special session. And he goes, what do I tell my mother? I said, for what? And he said, what do I tell my mother about eating, this food, that she always makes me? And I said, tell her that, why don't you tell her what you want her to make?
Yeah.
Because she'll love to cook for you. She's going to cook for you very special anyway. So she thinks you still eat the same food that you ate when you were 5 years old.
My mother always asks me, what do you want? What do you want to eat? I'm going to the grocery store every time I'm with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's ways around, that for people. And and it's just being, willing to say something. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to hurt their feeling. It's like, for me, you don't hurt my feeling. I'd rather have you tell me before I go to the grocery store as opposed to after I go to the grocery store. And having people, nothing gives me pleasure than seeing people enjoy their food, to have good conversation.
Yeah.
And because when you leave those scenarios, you always go home, you always feel good, you sleep well, and you wake up feeling really great the next day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's always a really good thing.
That is good.
Yeah,
all right. I got to wrap this up. I usually only do an hour to an hour and a half. I think we're hitting the hour and a half here.
Good.
This was unbelievable. Thank you for all your time doing this. I loved having a conversation with you before, and this time you're so damn interesting. If you come to Orlando, you got to hit me up. I used to travel so much, you never knew where the hell I was going to be. But lately, obviously, through the pandemic, I'm not. But do you want to give some information regarding where people could find you, or?
Well, I do, of course. As far as my book goes, you can find it on Amazon.com, Barnes & Nobles, all the usual places. And,
are you on BookBaby, my dear? Did you self-publish, or are you in, like, say, Barnes & Nobles, the stores themselves, or Books A Million?
These should be in Barnes & Noble.
Oh, okay.
Themselves. And I had a publisher for this. And it's Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? Find out now. My name is Dr. Patricia Boulogne, BOULOGNE. My website is healthteamnetwork.com. Usually when I do a recording like this, I always offer an opportunity to speak with me directly, and to take a look at, what's my best move for X, Y, and Z. Because I love to help people advocate. And so that they ask the right questions, they can get the right answers, so they can make the right decisions for them and their loved ones. So you can do that through my healthteamnetwork.com. The book's on my website also. You can find it there. And feel free to reach out. Ask me anything. If I don't know something, I will send you in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yep. And I got to connect you with Chris, because I definitely think you two, as far as nutrition goes, will definitely be on the same not same level. I don't know what, you're both on different levels. So,
well, on the same page. He said something very interesting to you, without going back into what he said, that I thought it piqued my interest immediately. So I'd love to meet him.
Oh yeah, you two definitely should connect. I'll send you actually his information, or at least where you can find him on LinkedIn, and I'll even send you both an email to introduce you.
All right, awesome. That's awesome. That'd be really great.
Oh, well, thank you again, Dr. Pat, for your time.
I love spending this time with you. Namaste.
Maybe we'll run into each other in Italy one day too. I'm sure I'll be eating a little more than you, and not as healthy.
Well, I don't eat pasta when I go to Italy.
Oh, I eat pasta all the time still. I can't get away from it. I try to
Yeah.
avoid it like bread, but I eat it. I love it.
I really haven't. I gave a couple things up recently that with the pandemic stuff, you know, and things that were easier to do because we talked about that. And, you know, and I just went like, oh God, I know that those things are just like, for me, that don't chemically work with my body. And that,
Gotcha.
So, but like you said, people do that all the time. And like everyone makes a mistake, you know, you just correct your next mistake with your next meal.
Yeah.
That's what I look at.
I think I made a mistake. Did I say this was Florence earlier? This is Naples, right? Did I say that earlier?
You said Florence.
No, I think I'm
You
right.
know,
No,
well, the
I think
body of
that's
water is a
Naples.
little too big, you know, for Florence. Florence only has like the Arno River that goes through it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
know.
this is Naples. I take so many pictures all over the place. Sometimes I even forget, but that's definitely not Florence.
Yeah.
Here we go. Mistakes. Admit them.
So there you go. Move on.
Yeah, move on.
Keep moving. Keep moving forward.
That's my fail forward. I always say keep moving forward. You're going to keep failing. You just got to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Annette, I love this time with you. It was really great.
You too. Well, take care, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. See you later.
Right. See you later.
Bye. Bye.